actually help you get ready and feel confident without having to, read through every single word yourself.
Consider it like the cheat sheet
Yeah, exactly.
to interview success.
Exactly. So you can walk into that interview feeling prepared.
Yeah, you got this.
Okay, so to give you a sense of what we're working with here, this guide covers a lot.
A lot.
Yeah, it talks about common interview questions, of course, but it also goes into how to answer them well.
With really good examples.
Yeah, and then there's also a whole section on researching the company.
Really important.
Oh, super important, and even like what to wear.
First impressions.
Yeah, so we're going to break down all of that for you today.
All the good stuff.
All right, so let's start with the interview questions.
Let's do it.
And specifically, how to show them you can lead a team.
Okay, so one of the things that stood out to me in the guide is that, when interviewers ask about motivating and developing a team, they're not just looking for like textbook answers, right?
Right, they want to see you've actually done it.
Yeah, they want to know how you actually approach it, like in the real world.
Right. Yeah.
The guide mentions open communication is super important.
Yeah, like having regular team meetings and stuff.
Right. But think about why that's actually so important for an assistant branch manager.
Yeah, why is that?
It's not just about, sharing updates. It's about creating that feedback loop.
Making sure people feel heard.
Exactly. And dealing with problems before they, become huge issues.
Right, that makes sense.
And ultimately smoother operations.
Yeah, a happy team.
A happy team for sure.
Yeah, and it's not just, talking at your team either.
No, it's a two-way street.
The guide also talks about, how important professional growth is, like offering training programs or workshops.
Cross-training.
Yeah, cross-training, things like that.
Yeah, because a team that isn't learning is a team that's not really moving forward.
Yeah, and I liked how they highlighted recognizing achievements in like team meetings.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
It's a small thing, but it makes a big difference.
Right, it's a powerful motivator.
And there's actually research that shows that public recognition can really boost morale.
Yeah.
And even reduce employee turnover.
That's people quitting.
Exactly, which is good for everyone, right?
Absolutely. Saves money, saves time, all that good stuff.
So basically what we're saying is,
If you want a branch to thrive,
yeah, you need a good team.
a motivated team, a skilled team.
And it's not just about hitting those targets.
No, it's about creating an environment where everyone feels valued and actually wants to grow.
Which then leads to better customer service.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's move on to what the guide calls critical operational processes.
Okay, this is where it gets a little bit more into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, the nuts and bolts of running a branch.
Yeah, exactly.
And they talk about efficient workflow management.
That's a big one.
Yeah. Have you ever used like task tracking systems or anything like that?
Yeah, I've played around with a few different ones.
So you know how important it is to streamline everything?
Oh, yeah, it makes a huge difference.
It can really reduce errors and save time.
Absolutely.
And the guide also mentions maintaining high customer service standards.
Yeah, which is like the most important thing.
Right. You want your customers to be happy.
Yeah, happy customers, happy branch.
Exactly. And you got to think beyond just, processing transactions.
Yeah, going the extra mile.
Exactly. How can you make sure your team is providing that positive experience?
Like really engaging with people.
Yeah, making them feel valued.
Yeah.
Building that loyalty.
Right. And then there's also financial oversight.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
For an assistant branch manager, you're going to have to show that you understand how to manage a budget.
Right, and how your decisions impact the bottom line. It's all connected.
Yeah, that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, they want to know that you can keep things running smoothly.
Provide great service and, not spend all the money.
Right.
Okay, so moving on, the guide also talks about tools and software.
Okay, this is your chance to show that you're tech savvy.
Yeah, you're not afraid of computers.
Exactly.
And they actually say it's important to be able to name specific software.
Like drop some names?
Yeah, they even give a hypothetical example. ABC Branch Management System.
I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, me neither, but, it's just an example.
Right.
And they also talk about budgeting software like QuickBooks or Sage.
Oh, yeah, I've used QuickBooks before.
And CRM platforms like Salesforce for managing customer relationships.
I haven't used Salesforce specifically.
Yeah, but you know the idea.
Yeah, for sure.
So the point is you should be able to talk about how you've used similar tools in the past.
To make things more efficient or to improve service or to, create better reports.
Yeah, all of that good stuff. They just want to know that you could use the technology.
Right, and you're not going to freak out when you see a computer screen.
Exactly.
Okay, so the next section of the guide is all about those classic interview scenarios.
Oh, you know those ones.
The tell me about a time questions.
The dreaded tell me about a time.
Yeah, but they're so important.
They are. They really are.
And they can be tricky.
Yeah, but they're really your chance to shine.
To tell a story.
Yeah, exactly. So for leading through challenging situations, the guide says you need to show that you can first identify the root cause of the issue.
Okay, that makes sense.
Then you got to keep your team motivated, even when things are tough.
Yeah. Don't let them lose hope.
Exactly. And then maintain open communication throughout the whole thing.
That's key.
So the example they give is about a sudden staff shortage during like a peak sales period,
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one.
like Black Friday or something.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone's calling out sick.
So how would you handle that?
Right. How would you organize the team?
How would you communicate with everyone?
Make sure they know what to do.
Exactly. And keep them, from panicking.
All right.
It's really about showing that you can stay calm under pressure
Yeah, be a leader.
and build teamwork, even when things are going wrong.
Which they often do.
Yeah, that's the real world.
Okay, so then we move on to problem solving in general.
Yeah, another big topic.
And the guide really stresses going beyond just, surface level solutions.
Right, you got to get to the root of the problem.
Yeah, like why is this happening?
Exactly.
And they also talk about brainstorming with your team.
Collaboration is key.
Yeah, getting everyone involved.
And then working together to actually implement the solution.
Yeah, that's important.
So they had this example about a drop in customer satisfaction.
Okay, I remember that one.
And the team all got together to analyze the feedback and figure out what was going on.
Right, and then they came up with a plan.
So think about a time you faced a complex problem. Maybe not a huge crisis,
Yeah, not the end of the world.
but something that you needed to think carefully about.
Yeah, and work with others to solve it.
That's what they want to hear.
Okay, so then there's handling customer complaints and feedback.
Oh yeah, that's always fun.
No one likes dealing with unhappy customers.
No, but it's part of the job.
It is, and it's important.
Yeah, because how you handle those situations really says a lot about you.
Right, it shows how professional you are.
Yeah, and how committed you are to customer satisfaction.
Exactly.
So the guide says you need to really listen to the customer.
Empathetic listening.
Yeah, really hear what they're saying and acknowledge their frustration.
Yeah, don't just brush them off.
Right, and then offer practical solutions.
Yeah, like in the example they give about the delayed order.
Right, they offered expedited shipping.
Yeah, and the guide also mentions how important it is to document that feedback.
Oh yeah, that's smart.
So you can identify trends and prevent similar issues from happening again.
Yeah, that way you're not just putting out fires, you're actually, improving things.
You're learning from it.
Exactly. So basically what you're showing them is that a complaint is not just a problem to be solved,
Right, it's an opportunity.
to learn and to grow.
Okay, so then we move on to how to make sure your whole team is working towards the same goals.
Alignment.
Yeah, alignment with the branch objectives.
Everyone on the same page.
And the guide says communication is key.
Oh yeah, communication is always key.
You got to make sure everyone knows what they're working towards.
Right, and why it's important.
And the guide also mentions creating an environment where people feel comfortable sharing feedback.
Yeah, you want people to feel like they can speak up.
Exactly. And then you got to use performance metrics to track progress.
Yeah, you got to measure things.
So they give this example of monthly check-ins with the team.
Yeah, I like that idea.
To discuss progress, celebrate successes, address any roadblocks.
So how would you structure those check-ins?
Yeah, how would you make them productive and engaging?
That's what they want to know.
Okay, so now for everyone's favorite topic, conflict resolution.
Oh boy, conflict.
Yeah, it happens.
It's inevitable.
And you got to know how to deal with it.
So the guide says the first step is to identify the root cause of the conflict.
Okay, figure out why people are disagreeing.
Maybe have some one-on-one conversations.
Yeah, get everyone's perspective.
And then you got to facilitate open and respectful communication.
Yeah, create a safe space for people to talk.
And then use collaborative problem-solving techniques
Like brainstorming.
to find solutions that work for everyone.
So they give this example of encouraging open discussions during a project.
Yeah, to resolve disagreements.
How would you handle that?
How would you make sure the discussion stays productive and doesn't turn into a shouting match?
Yeah, that's the key.
Because conflict can actually be a good thing.
Really?
Yeah, if it's handled well.
Okay, I guess I can see that.
It can actually lead to stronger team relationships and more effective teamwork in the long run.
Okay, so once you've, resolved the conflict and you've made some decisions,
Now you got to get the work done.
how do you prioritize and delegate effectively?
So the guide talks about categorizing tasks based on their urgency and importance.
Okay, that makes sense.
You can even use a matrix.
Like a little chart.
Yeah, to visualize it,
Okay.
and then delegate those tasks to the right people.
Based on their skills and their workload.
Exactly, and make sure everyone knows what's expected of them.
And when it's due.
Right, communication is key.
Always.
So the guide gives this example of a critical client issue that needs to be addressed immediately
Okay.
versus more routine tasks.
Right. So you got to match the task to the right person.
Exactly.
So how do you figure out who's best suited for what?
Yeah, how do you assess your team's strengths?
That's a good question.
Because good delegation is about more than just getting things off your plate.
It's about developing your team
Yeah, giving people opportunities to grow.
and making sure the work gets done efficiently.
Okay, so what happens when you run into a problem and you don't know what's causing it?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Those are the fun ones.
So the guide says you got to analyze the situation.
Gather data.
Maybe review past performance.
Look at the numbers.
Yeah, but they also say it's important to talk to your team
Yeah, get their input. We have a brainstorming session.
because they might have some insights that you don't have.
Fresh perspectives.
Exactly.
So basically, you're showing them that you value your team's input,
And that you're not afraid to ask for help.
which is a good quality in a leader.
For sure.
Okay, so let's talk about customer service again.
Back to customer service.
It's always important.
Always.
So the guide says you should focus on identifying recurring customer issues.
Okay, like find those patterns.
Yeah, maybe by analyzing feedback or observing trends.
Yeah, be proactive.
Right, and then take the initiative to implement solutions.
Don't wait for someone to tell you what to do.
Be a problem solver.
And aim for measurable improvements.
Yeah, like they give that example of increasing customer satisfaction ratings by 20%.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because numbers speak volumes.
They do, they really do. And they also give an example of a new scheduling system that reduced customer wait times.
Yeah, that's a real tangible improvement.
Yeah, people can see that.
Exactly.
Okay, so another important aspect of management is making sure everyone is following the rules.
Compliance.
Yeah, company
What?
policies and procedures.
All the fun stuff.
So the guide recommends a few things.
Like what?
First, you got to make sure you understand the policies yourself.
Right, you got to know the rule.
And then you got to regularly check to see if everyone is following them.
Audits.
Yeah, audits, inspections, things like that.
And training sessions.
Yeah, make sure everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing.
So they give this example of a checklist
Okay,
to help ensure that everyone is meeting those compliance standards.
that's a good idea.
It's about making compliance part of the culture.
Yeah, not just a bunch of rules that people ignore.
Exactly.
So what about teamwork on specific projects?
Yeah. How do you make sure everyone is working together effectively?
So the guide mentions a few things.
Okay. Like what?
First, you got to coordinate all those individual tasks.
Make sure everyone is on the same page,
Working towards the same goal.
and you got to be ready to mediate any disagreements.
Yeah, conflict resolution again.
It's a recurring theme.
It is.
And then you got to contribute your own skills and expertise to help the team succeed.
Be a team player.
Yeah, exactly.
So they give this example of a project with a tight deadline
Oh, yeah, those are always stressful.
where they had daily check-ins and addressed conflicts quickly.
Yeah, stay on top of things.
So basically, you're showing that you can keep everyone on track,
And get the project done on time.
even when things get crazy.
Okay, so back to our favorite topic, customer satisfaction.
Yeah, it always comes back to that.
It does, because happy customers are happy branch managers.
That's right.
So the guide talks about the importance of communication,
Yeah, keep those customers informed.
and you got to monitor the quality of service that your team is providing.
Maybe through feedback or observation.
Yeah, make sure everyone is doing a good job,
And then resolve any issues quickly.
like within 24 hours.
That's a good goal.
They also give this example of personally following up with a client.
Yeah, that shows you care.
Exactly. You're going the extra mile
Building that relationship.
and fostering loyalty.
Okay, so then the guide talks about professional development for your team.
Okay, this is about helping your team members grow.
Yeah, investing in them.
So the guide suggests having regular conversations with your team.
To understand their career goals.
Exactly. And then providing access to resources like training programs
Yeah, or online courses.
and offering feedback and coaching.
Regular check-ins, performance reviews.
So they give this example of a manager who connected a colleague with a specific training opportunity
Okay.
and provided feedback that ultimately led to a promotion.
Wow, that's great.
So basically, you're showing that you're invested in your team's success.
Yeah, you're not just using them to get the work done.
You're actually helping them advance their careers.
Okay, so then there's innovation.
Ah, thinking outside the box.
Yeah, coming up with new ideas.
So the guide talks about identifying problems or opportunities for improvement
Okay.
and then brainstorming and implementing creative solutions.
Maybe something that's never been done before,
Exactly.
and then tracking the results.
See if it actually worked.
So they give this example of introducing themed events during slower periods.
Okay, to boost customer engagement.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
It's about being creative.
And getting results.
Okay, so let's talk about turning a dissatisfied customer into a satisfied customer.
Oh, yeah, that's an art form.
It is. It really
So
is.
the guy says the key is active listening.
Really let the customer vent,
Yeah, don't interrupt.
acknowledge their frustration,
Show that you understand.
and then work with them to find a solution.
That works for everyone.
So they give this example of offering a discount.
Okay, that's a classic.
It's simple, but it's effective,
Yeah, it shows that you're willing to go the extra mile.
and that you value their business.
Okay, so then the guide talks about collaboration and communication.
Oh yeah, back to teamwork.
It's a recurring theme.
It is. It really is.
So they talk about regular team meetings.
Both formal and informal.
Yeah, keep everyone connected.
Team building activities.
Yeah, those are always fun.
And addressing conflicts quickly.
Don't let things fester.
So basically, it's about creating a positive and productive team environment.
Where everyone feels comfortable and supported.
Exactly.
Okay, so then we move on to project management.
Okay, this is where you show that you can lead a team towards a specific goal,
Manage timelines.
resources.
And overcome any challenges that come up.
So they give this example of a project to improve customer service response times.
Okay.
They implemented new communication tools.
And they were able to reduce those response times.
So basically, you're showing that you can get things done.
Even when it's tough.
Okay, so what about those situations where you don't know the answer?
Oh, yeah. That happens to everyone.
It does. It happens to the best of us.
So the guide says first you got to acknowledge that you don't know.
Yeah, don't try to fake it.
And then consult with your team.
Brainstorm some solutions.
Use their knowledge and experience.
So they give this example of a complex customer complaint,
Okay.
and the manager didn't know what to do.
So what did they do?
They talked to their team.
And they came up with a solution together.
Exactly.
So basically you're showing that you're resourceful
You're collaborative,
and you're not afraid to ask for help.
which are all good qualities.
Okay, so then the guide talks about evaluating solutions.
Okay, so you've implemented a solution.
Now you got to see if it's working.
Exactly.
So they say you got to establish clear metrics for success
Okay, but like, what are you trying to achieve?
and then measure the outcomes against those goals.
Get feedback from your team.
Analyze data.
So they give this example of a marketing campaign,
Okay.
and they were able to track the increase in customer engagement.
So they knew it was successful.
Exactly.
Okay, so now let's talk about money.
The financial stuff.
Budgeting financial reports.
The guide says you should highlight any successes you've had in reducing expenses
Okay, saving the company money,
and talk about your experience with financial software.
like Sage and Excel.
Yeah, name drop those programs.
They even give an example of managing a budget of over £500,000.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
It is?
So basically, you want to show that you can handle the financial responsibilities of the role.
Yeah, you know you're doing.
Okay, so last but not least, staying up to date with industry trends and regulations,
Yeah, that's important.
especially in the financial world.
Things are always changing.
So the guide recommends subscribing to newsletters and publications,
Participating in online forums.
checking government websites.
So they give this example of a manager who was active in a discussion forum about new regulations.
Yeah, that's a good way to stay informed.
So basically you want to show that you're proactive.
You're a lifelong learner.
You're not going to get left behind.
Okay, so beyond those kind of scenario-based questions,
All right, there's some other common interview questions that you should be prepared for.
like the classics.
Yeah. So first up, why are you interested in this specific role?
Why do you want to be an assistant branch manager at this particular company?
So the guide says you should talk about how your skills and experience align with the job.
And with the company's mission.
Yeah. Show that you've done your research.
And that you're not just sending out generic applications.
Right.
Okay, so then there's why did you leave your previous job?
Oh, yeah, that one.
This is where you got to be honest, but positive.
Don't badmouth your old boss.
No.
Focus on things like professional growth,
New challenges.
a desire to learn new things.
Yeah, frame it in a positive light.
Okay, so then how do you handle pressure and tight deadlines?
Oh, everyone loves that question.
Yeah, it's a classic.
So the guide says you should talk about your strategies for staying organized.
Prioritizing tasks.
Taking breaks.
Yeah, don't forget to take breaks.
And delegating when appropriate.
Yeah, don't try to do everything yourself.
Okay, and then another one, what are your plans for professional development?
Yeah, what are you doing to improve yourself?
So the guide says you should mention specific courses or certifications.
Conferences.
Yeah, like they give that example of a leadership development course.
Okay.
So basically, you're showing that you're committed to continuous learning.
Yeah, you're always trying to get better.
And then the last one, Tell me about a time you made a mistake at work.
Oh, yeah. Everyone makes mistakes.
It's how you handle them that matters.
So the guide says you got to be honest about the mistake.
Take responsibility
Explain how you fixed it.
and what you learned from it.
So they give that example of a scheduling error.
And the manager learned from it and implemented a new system.
So they wouldn't make the same mistake again.
Exactly.
Okay, so now let's move on to company research.
Okay, this is so important.
You got to know who you're interviewing with.
Do your homework.
So the guide starts with the company website.
Yeah, that's the first place to look.
It's a gold mine of information.
Read everything.
Yeah, their history, their mission, their values,
Their products and services.
who their customers are.
Check out the About Us section,
The team section.
the news section,
See what they're up to.
and pay attention to any recent changes or updates.
Because that shows that you're paying attention.
Yeah, you're not just reading the same old stuff.
Okay, and then the guide talks about social media.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
So LinkedIn is great for understanding the company's size and structure.
Yeah, see who works there?
And Twitter and Facebook can give you a sense of how they interact with their customers.
What kind of tone they use.
Yeah, and Instagram can show you their company culture.
Events initiatives.
Yeah, behind the scenes stuff.
And don't forget, Glassdoor
Oh, yeah, employee reviews.
can be helpful.
Yeah, take it with a grain of salt.
But it can give you some insights.
Okay, and then the guide talks about competitor analysis.
Okay, this is about understanding the industry.
Who are your competitors?
What are they doing?
What makes this company different?
You can find this information in business news articles,
Mm.
industry reports, market research websites.
Yeah, do your research.
Okay, and then lastly, financial reports.
Yeah, you gotta know how the company's doing.
Look for annual reports, quarterly reports, investor presentations.
They usually have information about revenue, profit, growth rate, future plans.
You can find these on the company website or on financial news websites.
Yeah, check those out.
So basically, you want to show that you understand the business.
Yeah, you're not just someone who's looking for a job.
You're someone who's interested in this company.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot today.
We have. We've covered a lot of ground.
But there's one more thing we need to talk about.
What's that?
What to wear.
Yes, first impressions.
They matter.
They really do.
So the guide gives a very detailed list of what to wear.
Okay, what do they say?
A dark-colored suit,
Navy charcoal black,
a light-colored shirt,
white, or a pastel.
a conservative tie for men,
Polished shoes,
minimal jewelry,
neat hairstyle,
clean fingernails,
a light fragrance,
no visible tattoos or piercings,
and a briefcase or portfolio.
to hold your resume and notes.
Basically, you want to look professional.
Yeah, put your best foot forward.
Okay, so I think we've covered everything.
I think so too.
We've gone over those common interview questions and how to answer them with good examples,
We've talked about how to research the company.
and how to dress for success.
So hopefully you're feeling more prepared now.
Ready to ace that interview.
So here's a final thought for you.
Yeah,
We've covered a lot today.
a lot.
From those tough interview questions to researching the company to even what to wear.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. So which of these areas do you feel like you need to focus on the most?
Yeah. What are your weak spots?
And what can you do to prepare even more?
Yeah. Gather those examples.
Practice your answers
Do your research.
so you can walk into that interview feeling confident and prepared.
You got this.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.